Hello, my name is Zachariah Van Sliders with Old Man Gaming, and this is another horrible game review. As you all know, we start off with the disclaimers. Disclaimer number one, I'm a house dad. Don't do this professionally. So, you might hear my kid in the background. You might hear my wife in the background. You might have to deal with my sick man voice. Not going to go back and edit it because I don't get paid for it. Number two, I do not believe in giving video games scores because I think it's one of the most subjective forms of art. So, I'm going to give you an overview of the game, the pros, the cons, and whether or not I'm going to stick with it. And again, all of these are just from my opinion, my point of view. And final disclaimer, I only get a few hours with these games before I do the reviews, especially with this one. It came out Friday. I did everything in my power to get as much playtime as I could with it, but I got to get the review out while it's still relevant. So, there are better, more in-depth reviews out there. This is kind of just like an everyman's take on the game, so hopefully it helps you make a decision. And if not, like I said, there are much better reviews out there. Today's game is Outer Worlds, and as I said with the disclaimer, I only get a few hours with it, and that is a true regret with this one, because this one, it just begs to be played more and more and more and more. So, quick overview. It's kind of sci-fi. There's a dark humor to it. I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but you're a colony guy who gets stuck on a spaceship that just gets lost adrift in space. And this kind of like enemy of the state scientist wakes you up with the intention of hopefully waking up the rest of these colonists who have just been asleep, floating adrift in space. The main setting revolves around a system of space that basically a bunch of companies got together and bought to create their own purely money, capitalism-driven society. Now, story aside, the story seems fine. I've only gotten so far into it. The game itself, the best way to describe it that I can think of, it is the truest form of a digital video game trying to copy a tabletop role-playing experience, for better or for worse. What I mean by that is the world is a little bit smaller, is more handcrafted. The maps, the dungeons, and the NPCs are all developed in this area, but how you interact with them is where the game becomes incredibly interesting and an incredibly unique experience. And that's basically what they were going for. Right off the bat, the character creator is not too long. I can say that, like in some other games, you get bogged down in the character creation for too long. This one's pretty forward and straightforward and to the point. I mean, as forward and straightforward as an RPG character creator can be. But the idea behind this game is role-playing. It is about taking your own imagination and applying it to this world. They give you so many different ways to do things, so many different ways to look at things, and that's not just the combat. It also involves the conversations. What I mean by that is, in most games, when you have social scenes, they take the form in cutscenes, or you get a couple of dialogue options that basically get you to the same outcome. Whereas this one, they literally pepper you with dialogue options. There's almost never fewer than 3 dialogue options, and sometimes there's as many as 8 or 9. And by dialogue options, I mean just ways for you to talk to the person. You can play a sarcastic, quick wit sort of character. You can play an idiot. You can play a really persuasive, charismatic dude. You can play just a straight hard ass. And that made the conversation so much more interesting in this game than other games. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That kind of sounds more like a pro. We should take it back to the overview. Combat kind of works functionally a little bit like Fallout, although I will say I personally believe the straight-up shooting without VATS is much cleaner and much more precise. The shots seem to hit a little bit better. You also have this alternate dodge if you double-tap the jump, which I found really cool. They also added a parrying into the melee combat, and both ranged and melee combat feel very, very meaty instead of, other games in this genre. One of them is usually not, or like a last resort. It feels like you could go either or and be and still have fun. I do want to say, I watched all the reviews before I got even to play, and most of the reviews jointly said that normal was a little bit easy and didn't get into the nuance of combat. So I decided to shake things up a little bit with my review hours. So my game, I started in hard mode, and I stayed in hard mode the entire time so far. So I haven't actually played normal mode. I don't know if it's too easy. So as far as hard, though, I can say definitively that the combat is one of the most interesting systems I've ever seen. Just because it truly rewards tactical, intelligent, strategic gameplay, and there are heavy consequences for just going in and shooting like a lunatic. And I found that really interesting and cool. Of course, I'm sure I wasn't building my character to be a go in and shoot like a lunatic guy, and I'm pretty sure if you, so I'd love to see if you could do that with a go in and shoot everything guy, if you could bump those skills and still be viable. But I found that, like, there were many times after the first couple of deaths that I had that I would get to a group of enemies and I would truly consider whether I needed to fight them or not. And man, I can't remember a game that made me think that made it so interesting to avoid enemies. Usually you just want to go in there and you shoot everything. So that was something. You also have two companions, which kind of brings in the Mass Effect elements to the game. And those companions, I will say, however, those companions, I found them more useful than most of the Mass Effect companions, or even companions in other games that have been around. And one of them died in every one of the conflicts that I had. Somehow, didn't die, but got KO'd. Somehow still, I found them more useful. They're a little bit more commandable, and they have these like cutscene stun attacks that are really cool. So it's worth mentioning there is a tactical time dilation, which is basically like a bullet time. A lot of people are comparing it to VATS. I don't think it's anything like VATS, because VATS was like a slow down, take it to like a percentage hit sort of system. This just slows your time and allows you to better center your shots, is all. There's also a plethora of other things that are in it. Crafting, your usual role-playing game tropes. I will say one thing I found different about this one is it's not a true open world in the sense that, once you get through that first opening tutorial, you can just go anywhere and do anything. It's much more like Borderlands 3 in the way that you collect a quest and then you take that quest through to its conclusion. What's interesting about this, though, is, with like a Borderlands 3, where it's all just those quest-based and then you're done, it's all about like a gun battle to a gun battle to a gun battle. This one is really like, how do I get to that section? I can specifically remember a point where there was a woman that I had to speak with without going into spoilers, and she was just in a camp of marauders, like 10, 20 marauders. So I didn't want to gunfight them. This was a little bit later in, so I had learned my lesson with some deaths earlier. So I literally snuck around the entire base, reconned it, then found a place where I could sneak through the traps in the back, climb up onto a second floor of a house, sneak into the house, down through the house, and get to the woman without alerting any of the guards. I thought that was the coolest thing. I just thought it was so cool that there was a way around this gigantic battle that most other games you'd have to fight. In that way, some people I know have actually said they don't play those big Fallouts or Skyrims because they're too intimidated by the world. They forget what they're doing, they lose their direction, and then they kind of lose the thread of the gameplay. I've never had this problem, but I totally understand that. This game doesn't allow you to do that. It definitely points out where you're supposed to go next and what you're supposed to do. It just doesn't tell you how to do it, and that's what's so cool about this, because it gives you so many ways to do that thing. So many ways. So we're already running a little bit long. Let's go right to the pros. Pros. Number one pro is the player choice in this game is off the charts. Off the charts. This is the first game I can remember playing as a role-playing game that I can actually think to myself, man, I really felt like I was playing the character that I created instead of getting suckered into specific dialogue options that I didn't want to do, or suckered into different player choices that just went along with the story. As much as I liked Greedfall, which was my last review, it still at times felt like, well, it's like the lesser of two evils. I don't want to do either one of these things, but I understand that the game isn't going to let me do whatever I want. With this game, it really lets you do. It lets you attack the situations that it puts in front of you in any way, and I love that. I also want to say, for the people out there who get bored by the conversations, long-winded dialogues and whatnot, I'd urge you to try this game. I really would. Just because the dialogue, they give you so many options that it makes it more interesting. It makes it more like you're playing the dialogue instead of just watching it go by on the screen or reading it to keep up with the storyline. I found myself just as interested in the conversations as I was in the gunfights, and that's a rare thing in video games. In fact, I don't remember a time when I found conversations so interesting. This is a truly remarkable game in the way that, so far that I can see, every playable option is viable. There isn't a weak option. There isn't an option that like you won't be able to get through. Even your charismatic stats give some combat buffs too, just to make them a little bit more useful. So if you want to be a talker, it's still viable. If you want to be a stealth guy, it's viable. They also added these leadership skills, which is what I've been playing through because I love the companions so much, and I think that's really awesome. It allows you to buff companions faster and with more ability. Another pro is on the subject of the companions. They feel more part of this game than just about any other companions. I think Greedfall was close on this level. Really, it was, with the level of companion interaction. But Outer Worlds still is the king. And what I'm saying here, what I mean by that is the companions interact with each other, they interact with you, and they interact with the people you're having a conversation with. They never feel like pets. Or part of a pet class. They feel like fully fleshed characters who are traveling with you. Man, and that is awesome. That is absolutely awesome. The one thing that I would say that was a downside to Skyrim was that it was a relatively lonely experience. You're basically by yourself. You get one other companion, and that companion is almost always mostly mute the entire time. This game, it's not like that. One of the quests I was doing, again, don't want to spoil what I was doing, but one of the quests I was doing, I had to make this big choice between two factions and who to give power to, basically. The companion that was with me at the time, as I went to finish the quest, stopped me to insist on which way she thought was better. And what's even cooler is she stopped me, and I could have dismissed her immediately because of the dialogue options. That's so cool. It really felt like there was another player like, this is what I want to do. I don't know if you agree with it, but this is the way we should do things. Another pro, I haven't tried this because I'm usually goody two-shoes in video games. I definitely am going to at some point, but apparently you can kill just about any NPC in the game other than the companions and one other NPC. Which is cool. Even quest givers, you don't like them, shoot them in the face. That's your prerogative. That's just really cool. I think that's really cool all across the board. And the combat system, I can't stress enough. There is a little bit. It's not as smooth as another shooting game, such as a Borderlands or an Apex. It's obviously made for the shooting, but it is way more smooth than any Fallout game I've ever played. And the real draw is how you approach combat, whether you're going at it stealth, whether you're doing a long-range approach, whether you're covering your companions, whether you're going in guns blazing, whether you're trying to melee people to death. It's very, very interesting. Every encounter feels unique, and that's, I think, the biggest selling point to this game. That brings us to cons. Now, my cons are going to get a little nitpicky. Because I really like this game and I was having a hard time finding cons, but I wanted to be honest. I wanted to really look at maybe some downsides of the game. So my first con is the weapon design. I don't know if it's just my choice or not, but I kind of felt like the weapon designs, they don't look cool. Not to compare this game again to Borderlands 3, because I don't think it's necessarily fair. They're very separate games, but every gun in Borderlands 3 looks cool even when it doesn't. With this, they didn't. They kind of look like you were holding garbage with a handle, and it's very nitpicky. It's a very small thing. It's definitely not something that should keep you from playing, but the aesthetic of the guns was a little bit off for me. There also, I felt like there was some opportunities to get a little bit original with the designs. Like I think there's like 4 or 5 guns right off the bat, and those guns have levels. So like a level 6 sawed-off shotgun looks exactly the same as level 5. It just does more damage. I feel like you could have made it look a little different. That's all. And again, this is nitpicky, and again, I didn't get enough time with the game to really get into it, so maybe there's some cooler guns later, but yeah. I gotta say, though, folks, I don't really have any other cons. I mean, I would probably say that it's a con that it's such a big difficulty jump between normal and hard, but like I said, I didn't get a chance to play normal, so I can't really say that. So yeah, I really like this game. I think it's one of the best out there. I think it's a Game of the Year contender, and I think actually most of the outlets that rated it, and they all rated it high, I think they actually underrated this thing, especially IGN. One thing that I do want to speak, one of the reviews, IGN specifically, and I can't speak to them. I'm sure they did a fine job. And like I said, a review is an opinion. But he had said that he doesn't really see a point in replaying it because there's not a ton of other stuff to do. Personally, I can't wait to replay this game already. I ain't even more than 7 hours in. And it's because there's just so many options on how to hit those situations that I feel like it's going to be completely different. I like a completely different game, even though it's the exact same content. Like approaching it as a stealth psychopath would be a really interesting way to do things. And like, how would that guy talk? And how would that guy, move? And how would he act? I can't stress enough, though, that you got to go into this game with a little bit of imagination. You really have to put a character together in your head when you're creating that character on paper, and then try and play him in the game. And if you do that, this experience is going to be like nothing else out there. If you're just looking for a Borderlands shooter or something along those lines, I don't know that you'll like it, because it's really not that. But it is a really in-depth. I still think those people should give it a try. Give it a try. Let your imagination, half of your brain, run wild on this one. And I tell you, anybody who likes this game who hasn't played tabletop RPGs should try it, because this is the closest to a tabletop RPG I've ever seen a video game get. So I've gone really long now. I usually do with the games that I really like, so I'm going to finish this up. Am I going to stick with it? Yes. I plan on multiple playthroughs with this game. If it wasn't in Games Pass, I would immediately buy it. It's a great pickup. Like I said, if you're looking for that straight shooter feel, I think you might want to look elsewhere. I mean, still give it a try, but it might not be what you're looking for. But if you're looking for a really interesting, really different role-playing experience, this game is definitely for you. I also want to say, just on a final note, I did not get as much time with this game as I would have liked. There was a lot of things that happened over the weekend that just kept me from playing as much of it as I would have liked to do before the review, but I gotta get a review up to stay relevant. So, if you did not find this review super great, the best review out there that I've found on this game is Dantix on YouTube. I'm going to try and put a link in it to his channel at the end screen of this game, so please check him out if you want a more in-depth, better review of this. So, thank you. As long as you keep watching these, I will keep making them, and I'll see you next time.
Did you enjoy that horrible content? Well, there's more horrible content all over this channel. You can check out our horrible podcasts, or you can check out our other horrible reviews. Be sure to subscribe and turn notifications on, and then we'll let you know when horrible products are ready for you to view. You can also do so at Facebook, Old Man Gaming, and then we can notify you in 2 different places. Fun! Also, click any of the links around you to witness some of that horrible programming right now. I mean, why do anything else? It's YouTube.